All right. Well, speaking of, welcome, Cory. Thank you for coming and speaking to us on the Ain't Done Yet podcast. We go back, our families go back for decades now.
20 years.
20
years now.
Yeah. We know your wonderful husband, and we are brothers with him, and you are our sister. But we called you here today. Thank you for joining us. John and I both have a, how would you say, a burning desire to understand more about a immense tragedy that took place in this town of Las Vegas, this town of ours. And that is the Route 91 Fest tragedy.
Yeah.
Right. And there's actually
Route 91 Harvest Fest. Yeah.
There's a better way to call it, right? It's not so much to call it October 1.
Right. Because that was more a Vegas name. Mm-hmm. And a lot of the attendees came from other states. So they actually kind of get angry at it being called, I believe, 1 October, I think is how they key it here. So we refer to it as Route 91.
Route 91. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So Route 91, we have talked to a handful of guests here on the Ain't Done Yet podcast, and we want to continue to dig deeper into this horrible tragedy that's taken place. I don't know if we'll uncover answers, a lot that have not been answered. A lot of things have been left open when it comes to this horrible tragedy, but we do know a lot of people who have been involved in some way or another. So thank you for being willing to talk about it. And
Thanks
if you
for
can,
having me.
yeah, if you can talk to us a little bit about,
because I mean, there's a lot of stuff on TV shows. Netflix has a new, little mini series going on this whole situation. And, TV can kind of be a little funky on what's real and what's not real and what's sugar coated. We talked a little bit about that in the green room. So it's kind of cool to kind of get a little bit more insight on the inner workings of what happened and how people were helped and all of those things. So yeah, it'd be great to kind of get your insight on it.
Yeah.
When did you first start assisting the victims?
So I was at the time a volunteer victim advocate at the police department. So I was at headquarters day one. But everything was so chaotic. So they said, just remain in the office.
So did they call you that night? Did you see it on TV? How did you end up there?
Okay. So I didn't know anything happened because I was in bed. Mm-hmm. I was supposed to go into the office Monday morning to volunteer as usual. Mm-hmm. I woke up to messages on my phone. Are you okay? Are you okay? What happened? What's going on? And I'm like, what the heck? And right away, I was like, something bad happened because people were reaching out that normally don't reach out to me. Mm-hmm. And I turned on the news. Were you
planning on going to the festival or?
No, okay. I wasn't. Because I had to volunteer first thing in the morning.
Okay.
So, and I wasn't really into country that much. So it wasn't really my thing.
So you're going to this, you're volunteering with this advocacy panel. Before this thing was around before this tragedy happened.
Right. So I was already volunteering. So we helped, domestic violence, any victim of crime, basically. We would reach out and offer them resources and that kind of stuff. So when it happened, I immediately I call her my boss because we were one. They treated me like I was a paid employee. I contacted her and she's like, just stay home for right now because we don't even know what's going on. Because it was just so crazy, they're just trying to get things set up. And so the second day I went into headquarters and they kind of sat us down and said, all right, here's what's going on.
This the place right off Martin Luther King
there?
Yep.
Yeah. So, the president was coming in. So we had to focus on that because he was supposed to come into headquarters and to the hospital. And they weren't telling us which was going to be first. So we didn't know in that aspect. Headquarters was completely locked down. They had everything was blocked off. I had to show my badge to even just pull into the parking lot.
Why would they have that blocked off?
I think because they weren't sure if there were other shooters or to keep other people out, I think, like the public and everything, because they just wanted to focus on this.
Okay.
So some of us stayed in the office and some of us went to the convention center, which is kind of the main center of where they wanted all the victim survivors to go. So if you had any questions, they had phone lines set up for the family members to call. We had, when you would first walk in to the right, there was a bunch of tables set up with all the different resources. So hotels were there, all the different like Red Cross, the police departments, Henderson, North Las Vegas, Metro were all there. Basically,
is
anybody.
Metro taking statements from people to try and gather evidence?
Oh yeah,
is that what they're there for?
Yep, that was one part of it too. I mean, and it wasn't just Metro; it was also the FBI was there trying to figure everything out. We had the coroner there. We had, just everybody in Vegas really came to. We had food brought to us nonstop, food and water, blankets. They had little beds set up for people. So what?
And this is all the victims because this concert, there was a lot of people that would fly in from out of town for this particular event, right?
Right.
So all these people are now stuck here, right?
Right. And a lot of them left their belongings. So they didn't even have their phones. They didn't have their IDs because they just ran. So everything was left. So during this whole time, there were people on scene who were literally recording, like writing down, okay, this bag was found in this spot, and they had everything marked.
Did they have a lost and found there, throughout the week? Did they start gathering all those items?
So what they ended up doing with that is after they had to photograph everything and they documented everything. And then they would take the bags, like backpacks and purses, and they had a special area set up where it was lined up like the seating. So wherever you sat, they kept the belongings in that area.
Okay.
Oh.
So you could be like, hey, I sat in this section. Then they knew where to send you to go get your belonging.
Okay.
So there was all that going on. And I was doing the victims of crime forms. So when you would come in, we had almost every single person fill one of those out. And on that form, it says, are you going to want medical assistance? Are you going to want money, counseling? Are you going to miss work? Things like that. So that way they could reach out to you after the fact and say, okay, I see that you wanted counseling. Are you still willing to get that? And then here's a bunch of resources.
So it sounds like they were pretty organized right from the get-go then, right? They've, even though this tragedy to this magnitude hasn't never happened here before, they seem to have a pretty good handle on how to deal with it.
Yeah, it was an organized chaos. They did a really good job at keeping everything really grouped and in different sections and organized. Another thing that I had started doing too was I would start walking with families who lost somebody. And we went into a separate room and spoke with the coroner, either to ID by a picture, gather personal belongings.
Was this all happening on October 2nd?
This was because it was on the 3rd.
On the 3rd.
Because on the 2nd is when they were just trying to get everything. And then on the 3rd is when everything was just set at the convention center. Like it was open, I guess you'd say. So on the 3rd is...
Yeah, because it happened at
late.
10 o'clock at night?
Yeah,
or
I want
8
to say it
o'clock
was...
at night.
I think it was almost 11, I think is when it happened.
Later in the night, yeah.
Yeah, because it was the last...
Right, it was the headline.
The last performer, yeah.
Right.
Jason Aldean. So then, the first or second is chaos, and then the 3rd is when everything was just set into place and it was going. Phones were ringing like crazy. It was just organized chaos. Yeah. And for us, it was like that for at least a week straight. Just, I say open to close, even though it was open 24 hours for anybody to just walk in. But they tried to get us, I think, say, hey, go home and sleep. You need to go rest. So they pretty much
How long would you be there
out.
for each of those days? How long would you spend there?
I think I would get there at 7 a.m. and I would stay until almost midnight. Once it kind of calmed down. And again, they were kind of pushing us out like, hey, go home, get some rest, and then come back in the morning. And they were very strict at who they were letting in, because I guess some people would just kind of wander in, like homeless, trying to get some free stuff. So they started kind of pre-checking everybody at the door, which is like, I had little stickers that were put on the back of my card that I still have. And that's part of my tattoo, is the stickers.
Oh.
So that's kind of what I did, was helped a lot of the victims. And we continued even after the convention center closed, because they ended up opening up the resiliency center, which was meant as kind of a temporary thing. So that's where they had some counselors and a lot of resources were there. So they moved it kind of from the convention center to the resiliency center. So it was kind of a branch.
Where's the resiliency center located?
I believe it was down the street off of maybe Oki. I had never gone down there.
Okay.
Because it kind of branched off of the victim services.
I see.
So they had their own people.
So
there.
As things kind of dwindled down, they moved it to a smaller location where they can just handle the rest of it.
So how many hours that week you were there? How many hours would you say you were there each day?
Maybe 15 to 18 hours.
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, I would pretty much go home, shower, sleep, and go straight back to the convention center.
And how much time did you spend with like each person or each group of people?
It kind of depended. If I was doing the forms, I would try to just help them fill out the forms, and I would even stress to the spouse, you might want to do this too, because even though you're okay right now, later on you might need counseling, because you might not know how to handle what they're going through. So I was kind of talking to them, trying to get them to fill it out. And then once we started getting more families in, we would just sit there and just let the families talk. A lot of them had, even though it was a horrible situation, they were still telling really good stories of their family member. And it was touching. Like, I had one of them was the dad who went there with his kids. There was, I think, 3 or 4 kids.
How old were the kids?
And they were older.
Okay.
I want to say probably 19 and up, a little bit older. I think because they were old enough to go and enjoy it. So dad's like, hey, let's go. And I think it might have been somebody's birthday. I can't remember, but their dad protected them, and he ended up getting shot.
Oh.
But even though they lost their dad, all they could tell are all these good stories. And then there was the husband who lost his wife, and he just wanted her belt buckle. He's like, I just want her belt buckle.
Were they able to retrieve the belt buckle?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we got that for him. And as he was leaving, I just kind of chatted with him. Hey, if there's anything else we can do, we're here, contact us anytime. And he's like, I just don't know what to tell my kids. What am I going to tell my kids when they ask for their mom? And that's when it's like really heartbreaking, because it's like, what do you say? And then you get the people like, I just want to know why. Why did he do this to us? And there is no answer. And I think that's the hardest thing, is there is no answer.
Yeah, we still don't have an answer yet. The police department still doesn't have an answer yet as to why he did what he did. And, it's just weird. Yeah. It's just a weird situation, weird, it's not like, even just with this, this latest attempted assassination of Trump again, it seemed like this guy was, living a normal life, has a house in Hawaii, why do these people, I don't understand why these people do this kind of stuff.
And you were mentioning, Cory, that there's like a ripple effect too, and talk about that a little bit.
So kind of like how I mentioned how I would tell the spouse that they need to fill out a form too, because just because they weren't at the event, they're going to be traumatized because of what happened to their loved one, or it's all the other people like the outside of there, the vendors, a lot of the hotel workers, when people were just running in, they're all traumatized. So it kind of spreads through there, or, any kind of mass violence like this, even if you weren't there, maybe you should have been there and you weren't, you're still traumatized because now you have that guilt, like, oh, I should have been there. Or, oh my gosh, it was almost me. I could, I might not have come home that night, or why did I do this and not have gone there? Like almost like that survivor's guilt.
Mm-hmm. Chad was talking about that a little bit too, and some of the people that originally helped organize the event, felt a lot of guilt for all of that stuff too.
That's another one of those strange topics of feeling guilt for something you had. It's not
in your control, right?
Yeah. I mean, and there is one girl, a teenager who was supposed to go with her group of friends, and she went to Utah instead, and one of her friends got shot.
Mm-hmm.
And she had a lot of guilt, and she ended up committing suicide from it.
Oh my gosh.
So there's that ripple effect again. So now her family is affected because now, and it's hard. And I was just telling somebody, so we also had the UNLV shooting, and I was supposed to go down there to that building to pick up my cords because I was graduating. And at the last minute, I'm like, instead of turning left to go, I turned right, and I'm like, you know what? I'm going to go to the store. And that's when my phone started blowing up because of the shooting.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, oh my gosh, I was going to be there. I would have been there. And then I got a little that survivor's guilt because like, I'm a victim advocate. I need to be down there. I should be helping these people, and my peers were like, just stay where you're at. Just keep shopping. Everything's fine. But then my husband, I realized he was more freaked out than I was because he's like, I could have lost you. You were supposed to be there. I could have lost you. And I think because of after Route 91 and then having the UNLV thing, it was almost like a double whammy for him.
Yeah.
So now he's affected as well.
Yeah.
So a lot of people will be like, well, you weren't there. You shouldn't have these feelings. Why are you like that? You weren't there, or just get over it. You can't, because again, it's that ripple effect.
Yeah.
You get some trauma and you get some trauma.
Right.
It's amazing how it does. It's and I guess that's the perfect analogy for it too. It's a ripple effect, right? Yeah. Reaches out to so many people. The other thing that you had mentioned too was how people don't really realize like all the workers and employees that were there, that the bartenders that had their tip jars there, and people stole the money out of the tip jars, and they didn't get paid, and they fly in. Talk to us a little bit about some of those people that you talked to.
Yeah. So when I was helping people fill out their forms, some were the bartenders who they specifically come in for that weekend. And they were telling me, they're like, I usually make at least $3,000 just for this weekend, and all the money is gone. They weren't getting paid because I guess everything from the management group putting it on, everything was locked. So they couldn't pay anybody. So they weren't getting their normal paycheck. And then the tip jars were all being stolen from people just running by, grabbing cash.
Sheesh.
Or whatever was left at the bar, everything was locked up. Like nobody could go on there to get any of that stuff.
Yeah.
Even if they kept their money hidden under the bar, it was still like you couldn't even touch it. Yeah. So I don't even know what happened to all the cash that was, like, if it was left there. I don't know if they even divided it up because they don't know whose it was.
Right.
So they can't even say, oh yeah, you were there at this time, so this part is yours. they just probably grabbed everything, put it into one pile.
Now, would those people have likely gotten compensated from the fund that was raised? I'm sure they're lower on the totem pole.
Yeah. So from my understanding is the money that was set for this is originally the 58 got one chunk of the money. Mm-hmm. From there, it went down to whoever was hurt. Mm-hmm. And whoever, I know it sounds kind of cold, but whoever was hurt the worst got more money.
Do you know the numbers on how many people were hurt?
We don't know an exact amount because there was a lot that got treated and left or never even went because, they weren't hurt that bad.
Right.
Of course it was way more than 58. That was just
I think that they said hundreds. There was 428
and those
people
are just
that were
the
shot.
Ones, right? Those were just the ones that went to the hospital.
Yeah, I think that's the number. Yeah.
Whoa.
There's a lot because I guess it ricocheted, and then all the people that were running and trying to hop over fences.
Yeah, you gotta think about
Alex, can you look that up and just see how many people
who tripped and hit their heads and just wanted to get home,
right?
And had concussions and
broken legs and
think about all that.
Yeah,
right. And that's
I was surprised when I heard the number. I watched one of the I was saying the documentaries on Netflix, and one of those documentaries said, I think it was 428 or something. I was like, what? I did not realize that. I would have figured okay, a lot of people died and maybe another 100 people got shot, but it was like 400. It was like crazy.
Yeah. He just opened up and.
Were there any accounts where anybody saying if, against the story of there only being one guy? Were any of the people there saying there was multiple people?
Not when I was talking to them. Nobody mentioned that. They all just thought it was fireworks, because I guess down there, it just sounded like fireworks. Mm-hmm. But I think it was the people who were outside of there that kind of had
more than 400 injured by gunfire and hundreds more who suffered injuries while fleeing the scene.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's just the ones that were at the hospital. That's not the people who just went home to take care of themselves. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So, because, a lot of people are like, no, I'm not going to bother. Yeah. Or they were taken care of on scene and then left.
Right. Right.
So what were we talking about? Talking about multiple shooters.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. There's that theory, but they found is the sound echoed from the buildings or people
that makes sense.
Just calling there's an active shooter and maybe the cell phone pinged from somewhere else. Mm-hmm. But no, there was just the one. Mm-hmm. Just the one.
Anything or any other details that that aren't really known to the public that you want to share that might kind of help people understand a little bit more about this situation?
I think the fact that we don't know the why is really hard, especially for a lot of the victim survivors. Because we mentioned there were, I don't even know how many, 48,000 or something attendees. And then all the other people affected by this. Mm-hmm. I think that's one of the most upsetting things.
Yeah.
Is they just want to know the why, especially the ones who lost somebody. Mm-hmm. I know that the police department and the FBI tried to find it, couldn't find anything. Is it still
an open investigation or have they closed it?
That I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Because I'm not there anymore. So I'm not sure. As far as I can think of, I think it's still kind of open. Mm-hmm. Because it was such a huge thing. Mm-hmm. So I think it's still kind of open. They did end up charging the guy who sold him all the firearms.
Oh, they did?
Yeah. Because
did he buy all the firearms all at once?
I guess he did. I guess he bought not all of them,
Mm-hmm.
but he bought like a lot of
I know he did.
mass.
I know there was a lot of ammunition that he purchased.
And I guess he would just go buy multiple guns at a time.
I see.
And that's why the other guy's getting in trouble, because they're like, you knew he was buying all these things. Why did you never say anything? Did that not raise a flag? And I think, I don't know what the guy ever said, but
Yeah, from a criminal aspect, it's kind of crazy how parents are being charged for, you know what I mean, in the situation that just recently happened with this kid. The father apparently or allegedly gave him access to the firearm, right?
bought
Like
him
the
the
kid
AR.
bought him the
Bought him the
AR, and
AR.
he had access to it,
Mhm.
and used it to shoot up the school. So rightfully so that he's being charged if that is the case. And then the two parents that I think it was in Michigan, right? They were charged and convicted, right?
Mhm.
And they didn't pull a trigger. Somebody else did.
Right.
It's crazy to think about that. Because I mean, does the gun owner, and I don't know all the evidence on it, but does the gun shop owner, how does he know what he's just selling guns?
Right.
He's just running his business. I don't know all the details around that, but and where the red flags are raised, and if there's any legality of you supposedly having to report something if something like that happens.
Yeah.
I used to work for a company, and one of the owners of the company was a huge gun advocate, and he also did a lot of training and stuff, Israeli tactical training and everything. He was just into it. It's his lifestyle.
Right.
But he would order a lot of rounds of ammunition. And I remember in the warehouse at one time, a whole pallet of ammunition came, and it was like 3,000 rounds, and his other business partners were like, what are you doing? You can't be ordering that stuff. The FBI is going to be showing up here thinking something's going on.
Yeah.
But that particular person, there's just like, they were kind of like that prepping type of person. They wanted to be prepared for whatever could possibly happen,
Yeah. And I think that's kind of how that store owner looked at it, because I guess the guy was some gun enthusiast or something. So, but I think there was some technical thing where they were like, okay, this was weird. You should have reported this.
Right.
And I think that's kind of what they
did. The
got
guy
him
go to
on.
jail for it? Do you know?
I believe he did.
Really?
Mhm.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow, that's crazy.
Yeah.
Very interesting.
But I think one other thing people should really think about is how I mentioned before, when we talk about trauma, that just because you weren't there doesn't mean you're not affected by it. And you can't tell people that they shouldn't be feeling what they're feeling. To validate their feelings is one of the biggest things. Even if you don't know what to say, just say, I'm so sorry. I'm sorry you went through that. And that's all you have to say.
There's a lot of times where I just don't know what to say. It's like, when something like that happens. So that's definitely good advice, because, it's hard in situations like that. Yeah. You don't know what the words are.
Yeah. I think that advice stems across a lot of experiences in life where, it's like, okay, I'm just going to not say anything, right? I'm not going to say my opinion because it doesn't change or make anything better, but you're going through it right now. And I'm here to listen, and I'm sorry.
Yeah.
And where can people go? You mentioned, there's this, talk to us a little bit about how this whole foundation kind of expanded out of this situation.
Yeah. So the Resiliency Center, they created this group called HEART, which is Healing, Empowering, and Rebuilding Together. It's a peer support system. So we're not, which I'm a peer support. I'm the first graduating class with it. We're not counselors or therapists. We're just someone who went through a similar experience. Just someone to say, you know what, I totally understand. I feel the same way, just so it's almost like that best friend, someone that you could just talk to and explain things without the counselor feel. We're all trained. And then we also have therapists and counselors there as well. They offer all different classes, if it's yoga, art, music therapy, anything that can kind of help with their coping skills.
Is it a nonprofit organization?
I believe it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's the name of it?
Through the Resiliency, they just changed the name. So it's Resiliency and Justice Center now.
Okay.
You just go to their website.
Alex, can you pull that up? Yeah. We're getting on that. Oh, you owe me a Coke, Jinx.
Through there, they have a calendar of events. And yeah, so like up there, it says get support. Yeah, there's the calendar of events.
And you volunteer here, yeah?
Yeah, so there's,
wonderful.
Okay, so calendar of events.
Mm-hmm.
And then through here, you'll see all the different, like little afternoon support group.
Oh, and it's still going.
Yeah. So they're trying to have something almost every day. You know, if it's just, you just want to learn to meditate. Anybody can call in for any reason. Anybody can do those. Mm-hmm. And a lot of these are online. So you don't even have to go somewhere. You could do it from home.
Okay.
Some of the things are in person, but it's because we realize a lot of the people were from out of town, and those towns don't offer support that we are.
I see.
You know, and then they have the one where it's specifically for October 1 under the calendar too. You know, because right now we're going to start having a lot of events for that. Like, I think there was a one of those holding hands where everybody lines up and holds hands. Going to be downtown.
Okay. Do they still have the crosses? Do they still put the crosses up at the Vegas?
No,
sign?
I think that moved to the Clark County Museum.
Oh, did
Boulder.
it? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And then if you go to get support, right there, heart peer support. So that's where I volunteer. You can request some peer support. You can become a peer member, which I think they just had classes for it.
Okay.
Jill right there is one of the founders because it was founded in 2020.
Okay.
She was a survivor.
I see.
So she was there. So she's a huge advocate.
Okay.
And then Alice is one of the therapists, I think is what she is. But yeah, you just go there. You can request it, fill out a simple little form. They'll probably call, ask you a few questions, and try to find a peer that is most similar to you. Mm-hmm. So one of my peers, her and her husband were at Route 91, but my other one, she was at one of the other shootings. You know, she wasn't there that day.
It's crazy the normalcy of this now, right? It's like these shootings are happening all the time now. I just don't understand it. Yeah. You know, this stuff never used to happen before. And I don't know where, you know, we got to get some psychologists on here to start explaining like why all of this is happening.
Right. And it all comes down to mental health. It really does, you know, and I think this month is mental health. What's causing that
mental health though, right? It's like, is it our food? Is it our food that is screwing us all up? Is it, you know,
all of the above?
Yeah, all of the above.
Yeah.
Huh?
Yeah. I mean, the pharmaceuticals and the pills that, you know, are prescribed and make people feel crazy. And
they just want to push that pill.
There's no cures. It's more like, here, take that. It'll make you feel better.
Well, yeah, you know, in other countries, you know, most other countries, if not the majority of all other countries, you can't even advertise for pharmaceuticals on TV, right? Where here it's like that is the biggest, it's the biggest, you know, advertising funds for these, you know, TV shows and networks, you know, and somebody had mentioned yesterday, I was listening to the radio and, you know, somebody had mentioned that, you know, people are specifically going into their doctor and asking for a specific medication because they heard about it and saw the images on the TV and is like, oh, look at the guy hugging the lady. And they're so happy. This probably will make me happy too. Right. So, I mean, I definitely think they should outlaw that. I mean, there's, you know, it's such a fine line, right? Because, you know, there's you know, freedom of speech is a big thing in this country and we don't want to lose that. Right. We want people to be able to, if you want to advertise your products. But then if it's harming our country and harming the people of this country, we got to really start to look at that stuff.
It is interesting, like at what level is of course I'm, all for freedom, one over everything, freedom, to what extent, and then it becomes dangerous.
Well, I saw that Instagram has now put controls on teenagers. So this I think got turned on yesterday. Anybody under the age of 18, their app will not work after 10 p.m. and not again until 7 a.m. And then parents can put additional controls on Instagram, so they can also monitor it as well as giving them a time limit, right? You can put that they can only work on it or be on it for 15 minutes a day, and I think I think we've started the process now, right? So that we can kind of heal, a lot of the kids who've been damaged by it, and then avoid, any new kids.
Do you think that should be related to buying guns too?
I mean, as far as purchasing a firearm, you number one, you have to be 18 years old. Initially when you buy a firearm, you have to wait. I think it's 3 days before you can take it. On the first firearm, and then after that, I believe it's only on AR-15s, rifles, that you have to wait a 3-day grace period now. I'm not positive about that. I'm a concealed weapons permit holder, so I'm allowed to take the firearm when I purchase it. But you have to go through classes and training. We know Brandon, and Brandon's the one that trained me for that stuff. So, but yeah, I mean, should there be harsher rules and regulations on it?
It's a tough one. That's
such a tough question.
So I was
$1 trillion question, right?
Yeah,
there.
I was just having this conversation with, like, she was younger, and she's all about all this gun control, and I said, okay, but do you realize that a lot of people aren't diagnosed with any kind of mental health until they're older? They're already purchasing guns at 18. They don't have any record of mental health. That's one thing,
Sure.
So how are you going to pre-flag them? You can't.
Right.
Because there's nothing on their record.
Right.
So they're getting these guns. Or you can't prevent from their parents giving them a gun. Like the last one, whose dad bought him the AR-15. How are you going to control that? You can't. Or how are you going to control the guns that are stolen being put into criminals' hands?
Right.
I
think that's the biggest thing, right? Is that you have, millions and millions of guns that are illegal across this country already. Right. And so if we start limiting the ability to gain access to a firearm, then it's hard to protect yourself from the people who are doing bad. Yeah. And I believe the number is, don't quote me on this, but I believe the percentage of people who are gun owners, legal gun owners, versus the people who are committing crimes and killing people with illegal firearms is like far outweighed, right?
Yeah.
I think it's only like 4% of legal gun owners that are committing crimes with them.
Yeah.
Yeah. The majority of crime is committed with illegal firearms. So, it's, yeah.
That's a tough conversation.
This guy again with the going back to the Trump guy, like how the hell did he have this guy is doing all kinds of stuff. 20 years ago, he was held up in his house with, illegal firearms and, went through this whole thing, went to jail, blah, 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 blah. Now he's cruising around with an AK-47. Like, how is this stuff happening? How is our government allowing these things to slip through the cracks, you know?
Right.
We have some pretty damn good technology now,
Mhm.
you know.
Yeah.
I mean,
Well, the kid, they were at his house like a year before because he was posting stuff on Discord that he wanted to shoot up the school.
yeah, exactly. They were at
And
his
they just
house the year
said, "Are you
before.
sure that it wasn't you?" And he's like, "No." And they're like, "Okay, but if we find out," and then they just left.
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
so right there they could have prevented it.
Yeah.
You know, or looked more into it or watched him better.
Mm.
You know, and the dad again, knowing that the cops are already at your house, why did you still buy your kid a gun?
Right.
Or, you know, if you do have guns, keep them locked up.
Yeah.
And
Especially if you have, and I mean, you know, like I taught my daughters from a very young age
Mhm.
that, you know, how to use a firearm, understand the firearm, all of those kind of things so that they don't
Right.
make mistakes, don't, you know,
but
and
you
then they're
still
not
kept them locked
suspicious
up
about
too.
it. Like, and well, on top of that, they are
Right.
locked up. There's no way that they could
You're not
ever
like,
gain
here,
access to them.
keep this under your bed.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, oh,
Right.
you want to go hunting? Here you go.
Yeah.
And that's what a lot of these parents are claiming. Oh, but they like to hunt.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay, then still keep your guns locked up.
Right. Until you're hunting,
Right.
you know.
Cory, when you were at the convention center
Mhm.
during this, after the tragedy, could you sense, uh, was there any like pride in like the city of like, hey, even though, you know, it's like absolutely horrible what's
Mhm.
going on, did you kind of like look around and, you know, like, okay, we're handling this?
Oh,
Yeah.
absolutely. I
Yeah.
mean, when I saw, you know, chefs from the casinos just bringing in food. I mean, we had truckloads of food, you know, waters, coffee, everything was donated.
You said hotels were giving away free
Hotels
rooms
were
for
donating rooms for, you know, the families that were coming in, or the vendors that were stuck there. They were just, you know, giving the rooms. It wasn't all the casinos, but I believe like Station Casinos was a huge one. I mean, it was just the outpouring. People were just going, donating blood, and people were just doing this on their own. You know, we had many just regular people coming up with carloads of stuff. You know, here I bought a bunch of waters, or here's blankets or pillows, or, you know, a lot of people didn't even have clothes because they only brought a little bit
Yeah.
for the weekend, you know. Funeral homes. I mean, it was just, that's that whole Vegas strong,
Yeah.
you know, and
it's
that's
really
how it,
coming together.
right.
Who
Like
coined
it was,
that phrase? Do we know who coined that phrase, Vegas Strong?
I didn't Chad mention that it was a
I think
part
so, yeah.
of MGM's.
Oh, it was the
response team.
MGM campaign. That's
Yeah.
right. Chad did say that. Yeah. MGM Mandalay Bay campaign was coined that phrase. Yeah.
yeah. So that's, you know, that's a huge, totally saw it. And then after the UNLV thing, then we got the Vegas Stronger,
Mm-hmm.
you know, so
And hopefully it just stops there.
yeah.
Yeah.
Strongest.
Strongest. Yeah.
Stronger.
Yeah. But because of our hard work and how well we handled it, you know, during all these other incidents, they reached out to us and said, tell us how you handled it. We want your help.
Wow.
You know, and because of that,
And that's with this resilience and justice.
right. And so
program,
because
right?
of that, it went from just this temporary thing for just Route 91 to now we're national. You know, now they are building like its own building specifically for this.
In Las Vegas, right?
In Las Vegas.
And then is there hubs, satellite offices in other cities too, or is it all just based here?
No, just based here.
Okay.
As far as I know, they kind of will, you know, the other entities will reach out and ask for help, and you know, they'll offer as much help as we can. So now that's why we're now accepting anybody with any incident. If you just want a peer to talk to, you know, go to the Heart and ask for a peer support. Just fill out that form. And we will, even if you're a spouse of someone, it's open to anybody affected by any kind of mass violence, which
Wow.
I think is just amazing.
That is amazing to talk about, you know, blossoming some positive things from something so horrible.
Exactly.
That's the good in humanity that is still prevalent. It's just the bad really, it gets better ratings,
Yeah.
you know, but it's great what you do. And, you know, we want to thank you for sharing. I'm sure, you know, just from discussing a little bit, there's been a lot of, you know, you've had to deal with emotionally, spiritually, mentally, you're coming out of this, the tragedy, and, you know, to share with us and kind of have to rehash things, you know, it means a lot. And we hope that people listening understand more. And, you know, do you know if the that fund that was, you know, was the money given out? Do you know?
Yeah.
It was?
Yeah. I mean, we kind of touched on it about how it first went to the 58.
Yeah. Like all the money. Sorry. Yeah. But how would you know, right?
Yeah. I don't know. I have no idea. As far as I know, is it was all dispersed.
Okay.
You know, they did it in different levels. And at that bottom level, it was basically who filled out those forms when I was there. Wow. So if you filled out a form, you know, and you were hurt, and there was some formula that they figured out and gave you something for that.
Was there, you had mentioned originally that there was a GoFundMe that was set up, and then that GoFundMe kind of disappeared.
Yeah,
and
yeah, there was like
where that might have went.
I don't know, and that's where we were all kind of like, where did that money go? Because it was like that first initial one. I don't know if they like closed that and transferred it to the other account. You know, if
and it
all
was
the
Metro
funds
that
transferred.
set up that fund, right?
No, that was not Metro.
The new fund, I mean.
I believe it was the Resiliency Center.
Okay.
Like they kind of set up one.
Oh, I see. Okay.
I believe. Again, I don't know
all the
financial part of it.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. Cory, thank you. Thank you for telling us about you know, your experiences. Again, the craziest thing that's ever happened to our town. And like we're saying, is a lot to talk about. You know, we've found that, you know, starting this podcast, you know, the most brought up topic is the Route 91 Harvest Fest, and, you know, what happened on that day. So it's
with the anniversary so close too, it's
exactly
kind of
7 years already.
It's sending JB and I on somewhat of a side quest with our platform and our growing podcast of, you know, hey, we're Vegas born and bred and bled, you know, this is our town. And so we appreciate you talking about it. You know,
and I appreciate you guys, because it wasn't just the 58 that were affected.
Yeah.
You know, there's a whole bunch more other people. And that's why, you know, if anybody's listening to this that's affected by this or any kind of mass, just reach out to the heart, you know, or if they know you guys, reach out and they can contact me. Or
well, we'll put this on this episode too, that I think what we're going to kind of do is just build one big episode with a lot of this content and information in it.
Yep.
But we'll put, you know, the links to the foundation and everything right inside there. So, yeah.
Was there, and it's such a tough one, you know, but have you been, was there things that kind of helped you, you know, as you're going through it? Did you kind of realize that you needed, like, whoa, I need a second. I need some help too, you know, going through all this stuff where there's some practices.
So I can say this is where I'm probably going to get a little emotional. That week I was just, you know, in work mode, but when I would get home in the shower is when I would just start bawling because that was my time to kind of release, but everything else was pretty much bottled up. Because for us, we weren't offered any kind of special counseling. Like a lot of the first responders, you know, were offered certain kind of counseling and we weren't. So it kind of went for a while without anything.
People don't realize that the counselors sometimes need just as much help.
Right.
Yeah.
And need counselors, right?
Yeah.
Right. I mean, and we did deal with a lot, you know, when you hear all these stories and see the people and all the chaos and everything, it's a lot to take in.
Oh yeah.
And I think recently, as I'm doing the heart, you know, because with our meetings, we always have meetings and it's on Facebook and everything. Every meeting that I attend, I learn something new. And I'm like, huh, I didn't think about that. And I talked to them. I'm like, you know what? I am very traumatized too. Even though I wasn't there that night, I'm still just as traumatized.
Yeah, you've become part of the story, really.
Right. And I'm like, but I don't tell people because I don't want them to say, well, you weren't there.
Right.
Or like I said, a lot of people don't know how to handle it. So they just don't talk to you anymore. It's like, I don't want that. Just be like, oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
And just go about your day,
Yeah. Sure.
because I do have stuff to say too. And I don't want to have to keep it bottled up just because I wasn't there that night. There was a lot that I saw and heard, and I did a lot of stuff. But people think, well, you weren't a police officer, so it doesn't matter. You weren't one of the medics there, so it doesn't matter. Because that's how a lot of people think of these mass incidences. You weren't hurt. You weren't one of the first responders. It doesn't matter. Your feelings aren't valid.
Well, let us be a couple of guys that say, thanks for helping the community.
Absolutely.
And everything that you do. It's very appreciated from our standpoint.
Yes, you are very, very much so needed in our community and in our lives. So thank you for sharing with us. And we ask a question usually to all our guests of, if you were younger, what's something you would say to yourself? But considering the topic of conversation, is there something that if you could go back to tell yourself when on October 3rd, to give yourself advice on how to get through all what you were about to go through? Is there something, or if there's, you imagining, someone younger that wants to get into a space to help, but, there's things that you can't learn until you just go through it. Is there something that you could say to yourself before going into all of it?
I think for me personally, it's kind of what you said. I didn't know until I got thrown into it. And I do handle situations a little bit different than a lot of people do. I'm more calm, collected. I get into the zone. And then afterwards, it hits me. I think the only thing I would do is just maybe talk about it earlier. Because when you hold it in for so long, it just kind of eats at you and eats at you and festers. And it turns into anger or resentment to other people, like resentment towards first responders. Like, am I jealous that they got everything? Yeah. But I'm not mad at them. They deserve it.
Yeah.
I just wish that other people would have gotten the same treatment.
Sure.
And I think that's the only thing is I wish I would have spoke up more maybe and talked about it more.
Do you think that kind of falls on, like the government, like our state officials a little bit?
Do you think it was do you think it was deliberate, or do you think that it was just kind of like you guys just kind of fell by the wayside because there's other things that are in the spotlight?
Yeah.
So they're only looking at the things, the nice chaos, shiny objects,
yes,
right?
That's exactly
and
what it was.
Out everything else. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think I almost want to be an advocate for the advocates at that point, because the victim advocates do a lot of stuff that people don't see.
Sure.
Because, we're not going to sit there and tell you, oh yeah, I went and talked to 5 women that were abused by their husbands. Yeah. Nobody wants to really hear that,
Well, I mean, I've known you for many years, and I didn't know that you were doing all of this other stuff. So,
right. Because I'm not, because we don't sit there and glorify it.
Right.
We're not like, oh, I'm a firefighter, or I'm a paramedic, or I'm a police officer.
Right.
It's like you almost can't be proud of it.
Yeah.
And it's a really awkward thing. It's like
because then you're like considered like you're gloating.
Right. Yeah. And then people are like, how are you gloating over something like that?
Yeah.
Like, well, because I do enjoy what I do. I do enjoy it a lot, and I wish I did more with it. Which is why, again, with this heart thing, I just, I have a really strong passion for it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And donating your time is, not a lot of people are willing to donate their time to for good causes, great causes, right, and things that help other people. Yeah.
So again, a big thanks to you, and thank you so much for coming today to talk to us. We really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thanks. Good to see you.
Yeah.
Me too.
Awesome.
All right. I think that concludes our episode with you, Cory.
Yeah.
Again, we are proud of you and we are thankful for you. So
Thank you.